How to power through sticking points in tasks. There is a point in any task, any goal, and any challenge where things suddenly get harder. Runners call this the wall. It's the point at which we run out of disposable energy. It is the point at which we become tired, but where there is still too long to go for us to feel like the end is in sight. It's this point where most of us give up and quit. So the question is, how do you prevent that from happening to you? How do you power through those sticking points? Here are some of the best strategies you can employ today. Break it down. One of the biggest mistakes people make when working toward a large goal is to focus too much on the endpoint. That is to say that they focus on where they want to be in a year's time from now. While this might be inspiring, it is ultimately too distant and far off to have much of an immediate emotional impact. What you therefore need to do instead is to focus on the short term. Focus on the smallest next step you need to do, and don't worry about the end goal. Focus on the fact that you have 16 miles still to run during a marathon and you'll feel defeated. Focus on completing just the next mile and you'll feel a lot better. Try nonreactivity. Navy SEALs use something called nonreactivity in order to power through moments of intense challenge. Likewise, distance swimmers refer to something known as a swim coma. Both these terms describe the same thing, the moment when you zone out and stop thinking about the nature of the challenge or your situation. Instead, you are now focused purely on the here and now. You aren't engaging, just silently executing the plan. This is tough to cultivate, but if you practice meditation, you may find you're able to reach this near meditative state more easily. Make it engaging. Another reason we often give up on tasks is that they become boring. This happens for many of us during work. The solution? Make it interesting. This is particularly useful for writers. Writer's block often comes from the fact that what you are writing is boring to you. If you can make it interesting, that will change. How to create a morning ritual for great success in life. What you do in the morning has a huge impact on the rest of the day. This is a little like the appetizer that will set your mood and that will set the tone for the day to come. If your morning starts with you leaping out of bed late and then rushing out the door, chances are you're going to feel exhausted and stressed. If your day starts with you knocking it out of the park, you'll feel confident and on top of the world. Listen up, and we'll go over a few steps that should feature in any morning ritual. Wake up at least 2 hours before you need to. The first tip is to wake up at least 2 hours before you need to. Too often, we'll wake up as late as possible for the day ahead, which accomplishes nothing other than to force us to rush out the door in a fluster. It's no surprise we end up looking scruffy and often forgetting important things that we need. Wake up 2 hours before you need to, and you can take it slow in order to really enjoy your day. Pandiculate. Not heard the term? Pandiculation is what cats and dogs do when they wake up from sleep. It's a kind of stretch that involves contracting the muscles and then lengthening them. This helps to reconnect the body to the sensory motor cortex, thereby giving you back full control over your body. This is why animals don't need to stretch or warm up before going for a run, and it's highly invigorating. Work out. Nearly every highly successful individual will tell you that they train and work out before they start their day. This is a valuable strategy for building immense energy and a sense of accomplishment, and of course, it will improve your health. Don't have time? Don't worry. Just 5 minutes of training is enough to have benefit and get the blood pumping. You can do your full workout later. Cold shower. taking a cold shower will increase adrenaline and testosterone. It will help to wake you up via the mammalian splash reflex, and it will train your discipline and motivation. It's not pleasant, but that's kind of the point. Meditate. Just as many highly successful people say they train first thing in the morning, even more of them claim to meditate. You should too. How to get into a flow state and stay there. A flow state is a concept that has been discovered by psychologists and researchers, and which has become almost mythical in status. For those not familiar with the term, a flow state is a state of total concentration and even euphoria. This occurs when we are so focused on a given task that we lose awareness of anything else going on. In the brain, this causes the prefrontal cortex to shut down and go quiet, while the parts of the brain responsible for focusing on our bodies and senses remains active. People achieve incredible things in this state, breaking athletic records, creating amazing works of art, and more. So how do you get there? The first and most important step is to ensure that the challenge level of what you're doing is just right. If something is too challenging such that you find it nearly impossible, you will find that you give up quickly and lose interest. But likewise, if it is too easy, then it will fail to stimulate you and you'll look for something more interesting too. The perfect task for achieving and staying in flow, then, is one that is difficult and engaging without being disheartening. What do you do if you're asked to do something dull and uninteresting? Simple. You find a way to make it interesting. One way you can often do this is simply to practice doing the very best job you can. Find a way to be faster, more efficient, more artistic. By doing this, you make the task much more engaging and therefore make it easier to stay in flow. Another important tip is to remove distractions. It's going to be hard to stay completely focused on a given task if you're hungry or tired, or if there's a loud noise coming from the room next door. A common and useful strategy is to put on noise-canceling headphones, play some loud music without lyrics, and focus on that. Finally, practice being in flow. Practice focusing on something as intently as possible while ignoring all distractions. A great way to do this is to try meditating, which essentially is a form of intense focus. Once you've mastered this, you'll be able to make your mind work for you. And when you do that, you can achieve nearly anything. How to keep motivated when you're in a slump. Anyone can be productive and motivated when things are going well. When you're having a great day and you feel inspired, it can be very easy to set yourself down to work or to get outside and do a workout. The real challenge, then, is to remain productive when you don't feel good. How do you perform when you feel tired and miserable, or when your motivation has left you? In this presentation, we'll discuss how to get your mojo back on those days and kick ass anyway. Prime yourself. When you feel in a slump, you might wonder what it is that's going wrong. Why can't you summon the motivation and energy to train anyway? The answer is that you have loss of inspiration. Inspiration is the instigator of motivation, and without inspiration, it is very hard indeed to feel motivated and driven. So what's the solution? One fantastic thing you can do is to try and win back a little motivation by priming your mood. Priming means that you're doing whatever you can to try and set yourself in the right state of mind, thus making the challenge that much easier. So for example, if you're trying to find the drive to work out, then a solution might be to watch some training motivation. How about the training montage from Rocky? Likewise, if you're trying to set yourself down for a day of work on a project, how about taking a look at an example of a project that you really admire? A perfect example of the kind of thing you want to achieve. Set rewards. Another tip is to set yourself rewards. That means that you create targets to meet, and then you reward yourself only when you achieve those things. For example, you might say that you'll make yourself a cup of tea once you've answered X number of emails, or once you've written Y number of words. This is instead of giving yourself the reward first, which just ends up taking time and setting you back. By using those things as rewards, you create a goal to work toward. Often, you'll end up putting off the reward for longer once you've begun being productive. Take a break. You know what, though? If you really feel exhausted, then it might actually be better to just give yourself the break. No one can be productive and driven all of the time. The neuroscience of motivation and self-discipline. If you want to stay motivated and disciplined, then there are countless videos out there that will provide you with useless platitudes and hacks. These sound great on paper, but they rarely get the job done. If they did, then no one would struggle with lack of motivation or procrastination. Instead of looking for a quick fix, then, the best advice is to think deeply about the nature of your motivation and focus. What is the neuroscience behind your ability or inability to stay on task? In this presentation, we're going to explore the answers to that question. The neuroscience of focus. Motivation and focus largely comes down to a concept in psychology called attentional control, or executive attention. This refers to the conscious ability to redirect attention, which is handled by the executive control network in the brain. This is a network of brain regions that work together in order to help us stay focused. Specifically, the part of the network responsible for conscious control of attention is the part called the dorsal attention network. The ventral attention network, meanwhile, is the network of brain regions that react reflexively in order to redirect attention. That means responding to a loud noise or the sound of our name being called. Neurochemistry. So how does the brain know which task to switch to and when it's going to do that? The answer is neurochemistry, the production of brain chemicals that mark certain activities in the brain as important. And in this context, the most important chemical is dopamine. Dopamine is the reward hormone that is produced when we work towards something that we think will be rewarding. Dopamine is released, for instance, when we eat something tasty or play a computer game. So what is it about computer games that causes the release of dopamine? It's actually linked with doing well, which in turn means we're learning. This is the key to motivation and focus. The brain wants to learn and keep growing. That's why we love play. Thus, doing well at something we find moderately challenging is a reward in itself. This is why it's so hard to stay fixed on a task that we find boring. This requires huge amounts of willpower to use the ventral system to stay engaged. Conversely, if you can turn what you're doing into a learning experience, then you will ensure your entire executive attention network is working in unison. Why you lack motivation and willpower. There are countless books written about motivation and willpower. Some of these are fantastic at building your drive and commitment. Others aren't so useful. But really, the question we should be asking is why these are needed in the first place. Why do so many of us struggle with poor motivation to begin with? In this presentation, we're going to break it down and get to the bottom of this problem. Life is too comfortable. The first thing to recognize is that most of us have no real need to change our circumstances. We are sheltered, we are warm, and we are fed. As long as this continues to be the case, our biological drives are going to be happy keeping things just as they are. And they won't want to risk those things, even if they can help make us happier, wealthier, and healthier in the long term. In other words, your emotions are focused on your immediate psychological needs. They are focused on keeping you healthy and comfortable. The hierarchy of needs. This can be explained by Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is a psychological theory that looks at the specific drives that each of us experience. This is often portrayed as a pyramid with the most basic and fundamental requirements, food, water, shelter, at the bottom, and more aspirational and abstract concepts at the top, social acceptance, actualization. The items at the top of this pyramid are the things that bring us true happiness and a sense of real accomplishment. But the items at the bottom are our evolutionary imperatives. This is what our body is hardwired to seek most of all. Remember, when we were evolving, we did not have the constant access to food and shelter that we have today. Your body is always going to tell you that it needs to be warm and comfortable, rather than working hard to get things done. So how do you overcome this juxtaposition between what you need to do and what your body thinks you need to do? The answer is first to train to go against those primitive desires. We can train willpower, just like we can train muscles. Get used to working out when it's cold, being productive when it's late, and taking cold showers. Then you can do anything. The other is to make sure that your basic needs are fundamentally met. If you're overtired, you won't be able to work at your very best.